I used to think love meant sacrifice. That if you gave enough, tried hard enough, made yourself small enough, eventually you'd become the person someone could love back. I learned the hard way that some people don't want a partner, they want a placeholder. Someone to stand in the background of their family photos and ask for nothing in return. My name is Sarah Chen, and I died in a car accident on a rainy Tuesday night, 3 years into a marriage that had slowly erased me. I was 31 years old. I'd given up my architecture career, my friends, my own apartment with the good light I'd loved, all to become Mrs. Marcus Harrison. And in the end, none of it mattered. Except I didn't stay dead. I don't know how to explain what happened. One moment I was in the car, Marcus yelling at me about embarrassing his mother at dinner, my hands gripping the steering wheel too tight, rain hammering the windshield. The next moment, he'd grabbed the wheel and we were spinning, and then I woke up. But not in a hospital. Not in some bright light or dark void. I woke up in my old apartment, the one I'd given up when I married Marcus. I woke up 3 years earlier, on the morning of my wedding day, with my dress hanging on the closet door and my phone buzzing with messages from my bridesmaids. It felt like remembering something I'd forgotten. Like waking from a dream so vivid you're not sure which world is real. I sat up in bed, my heart racing, and looked at my hands. Younger. No wedding ring. The small scar I'd gotten from burning myself on the stove 2 years into my marriage, gone. I grabbed my phone. The date stared back at me. 3 years earlier. My wedding day. Every moment of those 3 years flooded back. The prenup Eleanor Harrison had forced me to sign. The small, cruel ways Marcus had dismissed my opinions. The dinner parties where I'd smile and stay quiet while his family talked around me like I was furniture. The slow death of every dream I'd had for myself. And the final fight. The accident. The moment of clarity right before everything went dark, when I'd thought, I wasted my whole life on this. I sat there for 20 minutes, just breathing, trying to understand. Was this real? Was I losing my mind? Had the accident even happened? Or had I dreamed 3 entire years? My phone rang. Marcus. I stared at his name on the screen, and my stomach turned. I didn't answer. It rang again. Then again. Then a text. Where are you? Mom's asking about the final head count. Eleanor. Marcus's mother. The woman who'd made it clear from day one that I wasn't good enough for her son. That I came from the wrong kind of family. Immigrant parents who ran a small restaurant. Nothing like the Harrison family wealth. She'd looked at me across her pristine dining table during our first dinner together and said, well, I suppose love makes us all a bit foolish. I'd spent 3 years trying to prove her wrong. Trying to be elegant enough, quiet enough, accommodating enough. It had never worked. It never would have worked. Another text from Marcus. Sarah, seriously. Where are you? I looked at my wedding dress. White silk, fitted bodice. Cost more than my parents made in 2 months. Eleanor had chosen it. You'll want to look appropriate, she'd said. I thought about putting it on. Walking down that aisle. Saying those vows again. My hands started shaking. I couldn't do it. Not again. I called Marcus back. He answered immediately. Thank God. Where are you? Everyone's asking. I can't do this, I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. Silence. What do you mean you can't do this? His voice had that edge it always got when things didn't go according to plan. I mean I can't get married today. I'm sorry. I need time to think. Time to think? Sarah, we have 200 guests arriving in 4 hours. My entire family is already at the venue. What are you talking about? I'm not ready. Not ready? We've been planning this for 8 months. I know. And I'm sorry. But I can't. I heard him talking to someone in the background. His mother, probably. Then he came back on. His voice tight and controlled. This is cold feet. Everyone gets cold feet. Just get dressed and get to the venue. We'll talk there. No. No. I'm not coming, Marcus. I'm sorry. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were still shaking, but something in my chest felt lighter than it had in years. Even in those years that hadn't happened yet. Or had happened. I still didn't understand. The phone rang again. I turned it off. For a long time, I just sat there on my bed, in my apartment that I'd almost given up, looking at a wedding dress I wouldn't wear. Then I cried. Not sad tears exactly. Just the kind of crying that happens when something breaks inside you and you're not sure if it's breaking open or breaking apart. My best friend Jenna showed up an hour later, using the spare key I'd given her. She burst through the door still in her bridesmaid dress, makeup half done, looking panicked. Sarah. Oh my God. What's happening? Marcus called me freaking out. Are you okay? I looked at her. In the timeline I remembered, Jenna and I had drifted apart after my wedding. Eleanor hadn't approved of her, too loud, too opinionated, wore too much red lipstick. I'd slowly stopped returning her calls, stopped making plans, until our friendship had faded to birthday texts and nothing more. I'm not getting married, I said. She stared at me. Like, today? Or ever? Today. Maybe ever. I don't know. She sat down on the bed next to me, carefully arranging the bridesmaid dress. Okay. What happened? How could I explain? That I'd lived 3 years of a marriage that had slowly killed everything I loved about myself? That I'd seen how it would end and I couldn't do it again? I just realized I don't want this, I said finally. Any of it. The wedding, the marriage, the life that comes with it. I don't want to be married to Marcus. Jenna was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Can I be honest? Please. I never thought you seemed that happy with him. You seemed like you were trying really hard to be happy. It's not the same thing. Something about hearing her say it made it real. Yeah, I whispered. Yeah, that's exactly it. So what do you want to do? I don't know. I just know I can't walk down that aisle. She squeezed my hand. Okay. Then we'll deal with the fallout together. But Sarah, you're going to have to talk to people. His family, your family, all those guests. I know. My parents arrived 2 hours later. They'd been at the venue, dressed in their best clothes, proud and excited to see their only daughter get married. Now they stood in my apartment looking confused and worried. Sarah, what's wrong? My mother asked in Mandarin. Marcus's mother is very angry. She's saying terrible things. Of course she was. I can't marry him, Mom. But why? Did something happen? Did he hurt you? How could I explain that he hadn't hurt me in any dramatic way? Just in 1,000 small ways over 3 years that hadn't happened yet. That he'd let his mother make me feel worthless? That I'd watched myself disappear in that marriage? I just don't love him enough to marry him, I said. It was the simplest truth I could offer. My father, who rarely spoke about emotions, said quietly, Then you shouldn't marry him. My mother looked at him, surprised. Then back at me. You're sure? I'm sure. She sighed deeply. His mother will make this difficult. I know. And Eleanor did make it difficult. Over the next few days, I received messages from Marcus's family members telling me I was selfish, irresponsible, cruel. Eleanor herself left a voicemail that I only listened to once. You've humiliated my son and wasted everyone's time. I always knew you weren't good enough for this family. Marcus himself called once. Just once. I don't understand what happened, he said. He sounded tired more than angry. I thought we were happy. You might have been, I said. I was trying to be. That doesn't make sense. I know. My mother thinks you were after money, that you got cold feet when you realized the prenup meant you wouldn't get anything. There it was. The prenup. The document that had made it clear I'd never really be part of the family, just a temporary presence they could erase if needed. Your mother can think whatever she wants, I said. I'm sorry for hurting you, Marcus. But I can't marry you. He hung up without saying goodbye. My own family was confused but supportive. My parents had spent money they didn't have on the wedding, money that was now gone. But they didn't make me feel guilty about it. Money comes back, my father said. Wrong choices are harder to undo. If only he knew. The weeks after were strange. I felt like I was living in a dream, waiting to wake up back in that other timeline. But I didn't. Days passed, then weeks, and I remained here, in this version of my life where I'd said no. I went back to work at the small architecture firm where I'd been employed before the wedding. My boss, David, was understanding. Family emergency. I'd told him when I called to say I wasn't taking the 2-week honeymoon leave after all. But going back to work felt different this time. In my first timeline, I'd quit this job 6 months after marrying Marcus. Eleanor had suggested I didn't need to work. Marcus makes plenty, and you'll want to focus on making a proper home. I'd resisted at first, but she'd been persistent, and Marcus had agreed with her, and slowly I'd let myself believe that maybe they were right. I'd spent 2.5 years being a housewife in a house that never felt like mine, planning dinner parties I didn't want to host, managing a social calendar that revolved entirely around Marcus's family. Now, sitting at my drafting table, working on a renovation design for a small community center, I felt like I could breathe. But I was also terrified. Because I'd given up this career once before. What if I wasn't actually good at it? What if I'd been kidding myself about my abilities? In my previous timeline, I'd convinced myself that I'd quit because I wanted to, not because I'd been pressured into it. Now I had to face the truth. I'd given up without really trying. Sarah, can I see what you've got for the community center? David stopped by my desk one afternoon, about 3 weeks after the non-wedding. I showed him my sketches. My hand was shaking slightly. He studied them for a long moment. Then he said, "This is good. Really good. But it's too safe." "What do you mean?" "You're designing what you think they want instead of what they actually need. Look here, you've got the standard layout, everything predictable and boring. Where's the natural light? Where's the flexibility for multiple uses? You're thinking like a contractor, not an architect." It stung. But he was right. "Try again," he said. "And this time, take some risks." I stayed late that night, redesigning. It was hard. I kept second-guessing myself, kept falling back into safe choices. But slowly, something started to emerge. A design with more glass, more open space, movable partitions that could transform the main hall from a meeting room to a play space to a dining area. It wasn't perfect, but it was interesting. I showed David the next day. He smiled. "Now you're thinking like an architect." It was a small victory, but it felt huge. The months that followed were harder than I expected. I'd thought that avoiding the marriage would solve everything, that I'd immediately feel free and happy and purposeful. But life wasn't that simple. I was lonely. Most of my friends from college had moved away or gotten busy with their own lives. Jenna was great, but she was in a serious relationship and didn't have as much free time as before. My social life had been built around Marcus and his circle, and now I had neither. I threw myself into work, which helped. David started giving me more complex projects. I made mistakes, a lot of them. I underestimated budgets, misunderstood client needs, designed things that looked good on paper but weren't practical in reality. "You're learning," David would say when I apologized for yet another revision. "That's the whole point." But sometimes I wondered if I'd made the right choice. On lonely Friday nights, eating takeout alone in my apartment, I'd think about the life I'd avoided. At least in that timeline, I'd had someone to come home to, even if that someone barely saw me. At least I'd had dinner parties and social obligations to fill my calendar. At least I'd had a role, even if it had been slowly killing me. "You're being ridiculous," Jenna said when I voiced these thoughts one evening over drinks. "You're romanticizing a marriage that made you miserable." I don't know if I was miserable. Maybe I was just comfortable. Comfortable like a coffin is comfortable. Yeah, you fit inside it, but you're not living. I laughed despite myself. That's dark. But true. She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing something and feeling it are different things. 6 months after the non-wedding, I ran into someone I hadn't expected to see. I was at a coffee shop near my office, waiting for my order, when I heard someone say my name. "Sarah." I turned. Owen Harrison, Marcus's younger brother. In my first timeline, I'd barely known Owen. He'd been at the wedding, polite but distant. He'd lived in New York, working on some kind of creative project, And I'd maybe seen him 3 times in 3 years of marriage. He was the odd one in the Harrison family, the one who'd rejected the family business, who Eleanor spoke about with tight-lipped disappointment. Now he stood in front of me in jeans and a worn jacket, looking surprised and slightly uncertain. "Owen," I said. "Hi. I heard about, Marcus told me what happened. With the wedding." "Right. Yeah." We stood there awkwardly. Then he said, "Can I buy you a coffee? Or is that weird?" "It's probably a little weird," I admitted. "But okay." We sat at a corner table. He wrapped his hands around his mug, black coffee, no sugar, and looked at me with genuine curiosity. "So," he said, "you really just didn't show up to your own wedding?" "I showed up to the morning of my wedding. Just didn't make it to the actual wedding part." "That's kind of amazing." I blinked. "Your family doesn't think so." "My family thinks a lot of things. Doesn't make them right." He took a sip of coffee. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right call. You don't even know me." "No, but I know my brother. And I know my mother. That's a lot of pressure to marry into." There was something refreshing about his honesty. "Marcus hates me now," I said. "Marcus is hurt. It's different. He'll get over it." Owen paused. "My mother, on the other hand, will probably hate you forever. But she kind of hates everyone. So don't take it personally." I surprised myself by laughing. "That's a terrible thing to say about your own mother." "Doesn't make it less true." We talked for over an hour. He told me about his work. He was a documentary filmmaker, currently working on a project about urban renewal and gentrification. I told him about my job, about trying to find my footing as an architect. "Why architecture?" he asked. "I like the idea of creating spaces where people can live better lives." Sounds cheesy when I say it out loud. It doesn't sound cheesy. It sounds like you actually care about what you do. When we finally left the coffee shop, he said, "Can I get your number? I'm in Portland for a few months working on the documentary. It'd be nice to know someone who isn't part of my family's social circle." I hesitated. Getting involved with Marcus's brother, even just as friends, felt complicated. But then I thought about the 3 years I'd spent making decisions based on what other people would think. Playing it safe. Being appropriate. "Sure," I said, and gave him my number. Owen and I started meeting for coffee every couple of weeks. It was easy, casual, completely different from the formal, pressured dynamic I'd had with Marcus's family. We'd talk about our work, about Portland, about nothing important. He never mentioned Marcus unless I brought him up, and I almost never did. "You're spending a lot of time with Owen Harrison," Jenna observed one evening. "Marcus's brother Owen." "We're just friends." "Sure. And I'm just casually interested in whether you've noticed that he looks at you like you're the most interesting person he's ever met." "He does not." "He definitely does." But I wasn't ready to think about that. I was barely managing to build my own life. I didn't have room for someone else's feelings, even if they were interesting and kind and made me laugh in a way I hadn't laughed in years. Work was getting better. I'd landed my first solo project, a small one, renovating a historic house into a bed and breakfast. The client was demanding and kept changing her mind, and I made approximately 1,000 mistakes, but I was learning. David let me struggle through it, only intervening when I was about to make a catastrophic error. "You're getting there," he said as I showed him the final designs. "Still rough around the edges, but you're thinking like a real architect now." It was the best compliment I'd ever received. A year after the non-wedding, my life had settled into something that felt almost normal. I had my work, my small circle of friends, my too expensive apartment that I loved. I still had lonely moments. I still sometimes wondered what my life would have been like if I'd made different choices. But I wasn't erased anymore. I existed. I had opinions and dreams and a future that belonged to me. Then Eleanor Harrison died. I found out from Owen. He called me on a Wednesday evening, his voice tight and strange. "My mother had a stroke. She died this afternoon." "Oh my God. Owen, I'm so sorry." "Yeah, thanks." He was quiet for a moment. I know you didn't like her. She didn't like you either. But I wanted you to hear it from me. Are you okay? I don't know yet. Can I see you? I know it's late, but I don't want to be alone with my family right now. Of course. Come over. He showed up at my apartment an hour later, looking exhausted and lost. We sat on my couch and I made tea neither of us drank, and he talked about his mother. Not in glowing terms. Owen had never pretended his family was perfect, but with the complicated grief that comes from losing someone you had a difficult relationship with. She was hard, he said. She was controlling and judgmental, and she made everyone around her feel like they weren't good enough. But she was my mother. I'm sorry, I said again, not knowing what else to say. The funeral is Saturday. You don't have to come. I won't, I said gently. That would be inappropriate. He nodded. Yeah. Marcus would probably lose his mind if you showed up. We sat in silence for a while. Then Owen said, there's going to be a will reading. Apparently she left specific instructions. Very dramatic, very Eleanor. Of course she did. He smiled faintly. I should go. Thank you for letting me hide out here for a bit. Anytime. At the door, he hesitated. Then he said, you know, in another life, if things had been different, I think we would have been good together. My heart did something complicated. Owen. I know. Wrong time, wrong circumstances, wrong everything. Just wanted to say it out loud once. He left before I could respond. I stood in my doorway for a long time after he was gone, trying to untangle what I felt. In my first timeline, Owen had been a stranger. In this one, he'd become someone important, someone who saw me clearly and liked what he saw. But he was still Marcus's brother. And I was still the woman who'd humiliated his family. Some things were just too complicated. The day after the funeral, Owen called me again. His voice was strange, sharp with something I couldn't identify. Can you come to my apartment? There's something I need to show you. What's wrong? Just come. Please. I went. Owen lived in a small loft in the Pearl District, all exposed brick and industrial windows. When I arrived, he was sitting at his desk surrounded by papers, his laptop open, looking like he hadn't slept. What's going on? I asked. He turned to look at me, and his expression was complicated, anger and confusion and something else. My father's will, he said. Not the one my mother said existed. The real one. I don't understand. When my father died 8 years ago, my mother told us he'd left everything to her, with provisions for Marcus and me when she died. She had a will, and we all believed it. But I was going through her papers after the funeral, and I found something. He handed me a document. It was old, dated 8 years ago, notarized and official. I skimmed it, not understanding at first. Then I saw it. A provision leaving a significant portion of the Harrison estate, properties, investments, roughly 40% of the total wealth, to the wife of my eldest son, Marcus Harrison. Not to Marcus. To his wife. I don't understand, I said again. Why would your father? He didn't trust Marcus with money. Thought he was too easily influenced by our mother. Owen's voice was bitter. So he tried to create a check on her power by leaving assets to Marcus's future wife, assuming she'd be an independent voice. It was his way of protecting the family business from my mother's tendencies. But Eleanor hid it. Had her own will drawn up that she told everyone was my father's. Bullied Marcus into that prenup with you so that even if you did somehow find out about the real will, you'd have no claim to anything. I sat down heavily. That's why she was so insistent about the prenup. Yeah. And that's why she hated you. You were supposed to be the person who had power over the money, and she'd spent 8 years making sure that wouldn't happen. I looked at the document again, my hands shaking. But I didn't marry Marcus. So this doesn't apply to me. No, Owen said quietly. It doesn't. We sat in silence. Then Owen said, there's more. The provision actually says the wife of either son. My father wanted to make sure one of us married someone outside my mother's influence. He didn't care which one. Our eyes met. So if you married me, I said slowly, I'd inherit all of this. Yes. The implications hung in the air between us. I'm not telling you this because I want you to marry me for money, Owen said quickly. That would be insane. I'm telling you because you deserve to know what my mother did to you. How she manipulated the situation. How she saw you as a threat and worked to neutralize you. I thought about that first timeline. How small Eleanor had made me feel. How she'd stripped away my confidence and my career and my sense of self. I'd thought it was just her personality, just the way wealthy families operated. But she'd had a specific reason to diminish me. I'd been a threat to her control, and she'd systematically eliminated that threat. She really was a piece of work, I said finally. Owen laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. That's putting it mildly. What are you going to do? Contest her will. Make the real one public. Marcus deserves to know the truth too. He's going to be angry. Yeah, but he deserves to know our mother lied to all of us for 8 years. I handed the document back to him. Thank you for telling me. Sarah, he hesitated. I meant what I said before. About us, in another life. I know this makes everything more complicated, but I need you to know that my feelings for you have nothing to do with this will or the money or any of it. I know, I said. And I did. Do you feel anything? For me? His voice was careful, vulnerable in a way I'd never heard before. I looked at him. At this man who was nothing like his brother. Nothing like the family I'd almost married into. Who saw me clearly and liked what he saw. Who made me laugh and challenged my ideas and showed up when he said he would. Yes, I said. But I don't know what to do about it. We don't have to do anything about it right now. I just needed to know I wasn't imagining it. You're not. The will reading happened 2 weeks later. I wasn't there. But Owen told me about it afterward. Marcus had been blindsided. Angry not just at their mother but at Owen for bringing it to light. The family had fractured along expected lines, some taking Marcus's side, some acknowledging that Eleanor had manipulated all of them. He'll come around eventually, Owen said. Or he won't. Either way, the truth is out. Do you think he hates me even more now? I asked. Honestly? I think he's realizing he never really knew you at all. That's probably worse than hate. Life continued its strange forward motion. I finished the bed and breakfast renovation, and the client loved it enough to recommend me to 3 of her friends. My portfolio was growing. David was talking about making me a junior partner in the firm. Owen and I kept seeing each other, though we were careful. We didn't want to give Marcus or the family ammunition to claim this had been some kind of scheme. We kept it quiet, casual, undefined. But it was real. More real than anything I'd felt with Marcus. One evening, about 4 months after Eleanor's death, I ran into Marcus himself. I was leaving a client meeting downtown when I saw him walking toward me on the sidewalk. For a moment, I thought about crossing the street, avoiding the encounter entirely, but that felt cowardly. We both stopped. Sarah, he said. Marcus. We stood there awkwardly. He looked good. He'd always been handsome in that polished, effortless way. But looking at him now, I felt nothing. No regret, no longing, not even anger. How are you? He asked. I'm good. You? Fine. Engaged? Actually, to Melissa Vaughn. You might remember her from. I remember her. Congratulations. Thanks. He shifted his weight. I heard you're doing well. Owen mentioned you're making a name for yourself in architecture. Owen talks to you about me. Sometimes. When he's not being cryptic about everything else. Marcus's expression shifted. Are you two, together? That's complicated. Of course it is. He didn't sound angry, just tired. My mother really did a number on all of us, didn't she? Yeah, she did. I've been thinking a lot about our relationship. About why you really left. I waited. I think I was a coward, he said. I let my mother control too much. I didn't stand up for you, or for us, or for anything really. I just went along with what was expected. Yes, I said simply. I'm trying to be different now. With Melissa. Setting boundaries with the family, making my own decisions. That's good, Marcus. I'm glad. He studied me. You don't hate me. No, I don't. I think I wanted you to hate me. Would have been easier than this, nothing. I understood what he meant. I don't hate you. I just don't think we were right for each other. We would have made each other miserable. Yeah, he said quietly. Yeah, I think you're right. We said goodbye, polite and final, and went our separate ways. That night, Owen came over with takeout and we ate sitting on my couch, the TV on but neither of us watching it. I saw Marcus today, I said. How was that? Strange. But not bad. I think we both got closure. Owen was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'm moving back to New York next month. My documentary is done and I have another project starting up there. My stomach dropped. Oh. Come with me. I turned to look at him. What? Come to New York. You've been talking about wanting to work on bigger projects, about feeling limited here. David's great, but you're outgrowing the firm. New York has opportunities. Owen, I can't just. I'm not asking you to marry me or move in with me or make any huge commitment. I'm just asking you to take a risk. On yourself. On us. On something bigger than what you have here. I thought about my first timeline. How I'd made every decision based on what other people wanted, what was safe, what was expected. I'd given up my dreams to fit into someone else's life. But this was different. Owen wasn't asking me to give up anything. He was asking me to choose something bigger. I need to think about it, I said. Take all the time you need. I thought about it for 2 weeks. I made pro and con lists. I talked to Jenna, who said, if you don't go, you'll always wonder what if. I talked to David, who said, you're ready for this. You've been ready for a while. I thought about the woman I'd been in that first timeline. Small, quiet, erased. And I thought about the woman I'd become in this one. Someone who took risks, who failed and learned and kept going, who built a life on her own terms. I called Owen. I'll come to New York. But I'm getting my own apartment, at least at first. And I'm doing this for my career, not just for you. I could hear the smile in his voice. I wouldn't want it any other way. 3 months later, I stood in a small apartment in Brooklyn, boxes everywhere, starting over again. But this time, it felt different. This time, I was choosing it. I'd taken a job at a mid-sized architecture firm in Manhattan, working on residential projects in the city. The work was challenging, sometimes overwhelming, but exactly what I needed. Owen and I were dating, officially now, though we took it slow. We'd both been shaped by complicated families and had our own baggage to work through. But we showed up for each other. We talked about hard things. We didn't try to be perfect. Sometimes I thought about that other timeline, about the woman I'd been, the life I'd lived, the accident that had somehow given me a second chance. I still didn't understand it. Maybe I never would. But I'd learned something important. You don't need to understand why you get a second chance to make the most of it. You just need to be brave enough to make different choices. 6 months into New York, I got assigned to a major project, converting an old factory into affordable housing. It was the kind of work I dreamed about, the kind that actually mattered. I stayed late most nights, working on designs that would give people real homes, real spaces to build lives in. Owen would bring me dinner, work on his editing in the corner of my office, drive me home when I was too tired to take the subway. You're happy, he observed one night as we walked back to my apartment. I am, I said, surprised by how true it was. Not perfect. Not without challenges or fears or moments of doubt. But happy in a real, grounded way that I'd never been before. I'd given up the money from the will. It had never felt right to take it, and Owen had agreed. We'd set up a foundation instead, funding arts education programs in underserved communities. Eleanor would have hated it, which made it feel exactly right. Marcus got married to Melissa. Owen went to the wedding. I didn't. We were cordial now, Marcus and I, but some boundaries were better left in place. A year after moving to New York, I got promoted to senior architect at my firm. My name was on projects now, real projects that would stand in the city for decades. Owen and I moved in together, into a larger apartment in Park Slope with good light and space for both of us to work. We still took things one day at a time. We still had hard conversations and disagreements and moments of uncertainty, but we showed up for each other. We chose each other, every day. And that made all the difference. Sometimes, late at night, I'd wake up and have a moment of panic, wondering if I'd wake up back in that other timeline, if this had all been a dream. But then I'd feel Owen breathing beside me, see my drafting table in the corner covered with my current project, remember the life I'd built with my own hands and my own choices. And I'd know, this was real. I'd been given a second chance, somehow, someway. And I'd used it not to get revenge or to win or to prove anything to anyone. I'd used it to choose myself, to build a life that was mine, to love someone who saw me clearly and chose me back. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.